In these perilous times, see from current events how biblical prophecy is coming to pass in front of our eyes. You're watching In the Last Days, the program that looks at Israel and the end times with teaching from a Hebraic perspective. With Martin and Natalie Blackham, thank you to our friends and partners who make this program possible. Now, here's Martin and Natalie.
Shalom, dear friends. Wonderful to be with you again this week. My name is Natalie Blackham, and it's a pleasure to present you In the Last Days TV program today. And it's a joy today again to be with Lela Gilbert. She is a freelance journalist or freelance writer, writer, and she co-author and author more than 60 books. She's from America, but she lives also in Jerusalem, so she belongs to two countries now. Her home is very much in Israel now, I think, isn't it? Yeah. And she's a great lady. She's an advocate for truth. And she wrote, we want to speak today about this book, Saturday People and Sunday People. You can find it on Amazon. And it's very important for us to know the truth. You know that the main media quite often is not giving you the full truth. And now more and more we can see rising some journalists who say, we want to speak, and Revelation TV have been great for us to be able to do some program with them and to give you what's happening here in Israel and also in the Middle East. And it's so important for you to be connected with Israel. So, Lela, thank you again for coming here and to be with us. And speak a bit, how did you arrive in Israel?
Well, it was the story of my father to begin with. My father was a Christian and he was a Zionist. Back in the day when he became a believer, things were moving toward Israel becoming a state. And by the time that took place, he was convinced that it was the fulfillment of biblical prophecy. And so he fell in love with all things to do with Israel. And we had talked about coming here someday together, but he didn't live so long as to let that happen. Meanwhile, I had been all over the world traveling for various projects and never here. And in 2006, I was in Egypt with some friends, and I could see Israel. I was standing in Nuweiba on the beach. I could see Israel, I could see Jordan, I could see Saudi Arabia. And I had this little voice in my mind say, if you're going to go to Israel, you're going to have to get yourself there, or you're going to be like Moses, looking at the land from afar and never getting there. So I went home and I found enough mileage to get myself there. And I rented an apartment online because I was working on a project in England at the time. So I went, I came in the middle of a war by accident. I came in the middle of the Lebanon war, and I stayed, and I made so many friends, and so many things happened that I just kept staying and staying, and now it's been 8 years.
8 years, oh, this is wonderful. So what was your first impression when you arrived here?
Well, it was a war, and I think the thing that was so powerful to me was the unity of the people, which as the war ended, that changed because everyone began to argue a bit about what happened and what didn't happen and so forth. But the first day of my life in Jerusalem, it was Tisha B'Av, and I went to the Western Wall. First day I'd ever
So what
been.
is Tisha B'Av?
Tisha B'Av is a holiday, excuse me, it's a fast day that remembers the destruction of the temple, both the first temple and the second temple. And the Jews come together and they fast that day and they remember and they pray for the restoration of the land and so forth. And they all come to the Western Wall. And during that war, it was particularly noticeable because there were many soldiers there, weeping, standing with their arms around each other and praying at the wall with their hands on the wall. And I was so moved. It was such a beautiful sight. It was like a tapestry of every kind of Jew in the world. And there they were, and there I was for the first time, and I remember people singing Hatikvah. And I really think it was a gift from God to me to show me this is Israel. Yes, they argued later. Yes, things go wrong. And I've been through 2 or 3 other operations since I've been here, 2 of the Gaza ones and some other things. But I think I saw the heart of the people. That was probably my first powerful impression.
Interesting, because I've learned also coming here, for me, it was on the day of Yom Ha'atzmaut, the day of independence. And for me, when I saw them all coming in Jerusalem and started to celebrate, I was like, this is not just people, it's like a big family who are coming together. And this will stay inside of me like for all my life.
Yeah, it's an amazing thing. And I can remember when America was at least a little more patriotic, and we used to, so 4th of July was like that. You know, everybody came together, barbecues everywhere. It's changed a lot in America. And seeing it here is so beautiful. And it's like, this is, you know, it really is God's country. And you can feel that and you can hear it. And it's really, I just love being here when those things happen.
This is wonderful. So in your book also you speak about one thing was very touching that touched me also when I discovered that here, coming here, the refugees, not the Palestinian refugees, as we are calling them now, but the refugees, the Jewish people. Speak to us a bit about that.
One year, I went, almost every year, I've gone to the Herzliya Conference, which is the securities conference that's held, where people come from all over the world, experts in military and intelligence and all sorts of educational issues. One year I was at, I think it was 2009, I'm not really sure, but I wandered into a workshop because I didn't have anything marked on my schedule. And I walked in and these people were talking about coming to Israel. But they were talking about coming from the Muslim world and how their parents, and some of them had been refugees, some of them, their parents and grandparents. I had no idea that there were so many. And it turned out there were 850,000, or some people say as many as 1 million, that were expelled from Muslim lands between maybe starting in a little before 48, but from 48 until after the 67 war. There were more of them than there are of the Palestinian refugees. Of course, now they've multiplied into generation upon generation, and they're all called refugees, but they're not.
Yes, because refugee is somebody who can't go anywhere, who doesn't belong to anywhere.
Right. And the UN even says that, the UNHCR says it's only to the first generation, but that's not what they do with UNRWA, which is the part that's devoted to the Palestinian refugees. But anyway, these people came, many of them were very wealthy. They lost all their money. They were elite people, and they had been in these Muslim countries for thousands of years, millennia. And here they came back, and there were tents, just like the people in Kurdistan today. They came, they lived in tents. They had no future. They had to learn a new language. Everything was impossible.
And they left without any money, just with the clothes on their back, which is like Kurdistan.
One woman that I know told me that, and she was a little girl, she was a little baby actually. Her parents, they even took their gold wedding rings when they left the country. This was Iraq. And she had a little gold clip in her hair. She was 10 months old, and the soldier took her hair and cut off her hair to get this little gold clip. This is the level of greed and malice. So they came here, and now 50% of the population is peopled by their generations. They married, they intermarried with the other Jewish communities. So the country has a fabric of refugees that they never wanted to call themselves that. They said, we came home, we made Aliyah. But the truth is that they were as desperate as the ones today, except for one thing, this was home. They came home. And today, the Christians that are being kicked out of these same countries, Saturday people, Sunday people, they don't have a home. There is no place. Nobody wants them. Nobody wants Middle Eastern refugees. And, you know, it's a tragedy. But they take 5,000 here, 5,000 there. There are millions of them.
I heard even that the UK didn't want any. I don't know what they are doing now. Oh, I think Canon Andrew White was working on that with the government saying, you have to do something. You can't just leave people. I mean, interesting enough, for Vietnam, I don't know if you remember, the boat people, Israel took some refugees.
Right.
I didn't know that. I've learned that here when I came in to live in this country, and I was like, amazing, you know. It's like Israel, who is already a country at war, really, who have to absorb so many of their own people and saying, no, we can't let the people go.
That's right.
So us as Western country, we have to wake up, and thank you to Canon Andrew White, who's working so hard for that. Okay, maybe we carry on speaking about your book, but there is so many things. I wanted to tell you something. What did you discover from the people? I remember a passage in your book where you say, I'm walking on the street and I can hear music and I can hear... explain to us how you discover the people also.
Well, I lived in Baca when I first came, and I would walk down the street and I would hear, well, first of all, on Shabbat, you know, I had no experience with Shabbat and actually didn't know how to prepare and have food in my house, so I had to figure things out pretty quickly. But
everything was closing.
Everything was closing, and I was, I didn't have groceries, and it was kind of funny. In retrospect, it was funny.
It happens to us too a few times. Saying, oh, I still have a bit of time, and I'll go over there. And it's like, no, everything is closed, finished.
It's finished. But what happens in the evening, on Erev Shabbat, on Friday night, is that families come together. And they sing the blessings on the food. They have a liturgy of sorts. Different countries have different songs. And I've learned that since, because I've been to many homes and sat there and heard this beautiful, beautiful singing. But up and down the streets, you hear this. And then on other days, I hear people practicing the piano, practicing the saxophone, some not so pretty, but they were getting there. But I was amazed at the soul of it, you know, this beautiful musical spirit. And I love music, and I have written a few songs, so I resonate with that very much. But I think the thing that touches me, too, is the family, the spirit of the family here. The people come together. They may fight like cats and dogs, but they get together for Shabbat, they get together for holidays, they come together, they sing together, they bless God together.
That's true. And reading your book, I really enjoy it, because we discover also Israel coming to live here. And reading what you were, I was like, oh yeah, she discovered what we have discovered. It was really lovely. Please, you know, buy this book. It's Christmas time very, very soon. And, you know, people do give to each other and all of that. This is a great book to be able to discover also Israel through the eyes of a Christian sojourner. And it's very well written. It's interesting when you speak about these things, again, about this music thing. I was reading... I think I saw a YouTube or I read something, and it was people from Islam who were saying, we don't want music.
That's right. The Taliban, particularly.
Yes.
Well, all of them, yeah.
How can you... We don't want to play, you know, instruments. We don't want music.
Yeah, no,
and I'm like, but this is like part of who we are, for our soul.
Well, they do that with almost everything. The real radical side of Islam doesn't believe in any kind of figurative art. They don't believe in music. They don't believe in anything that is beautiful, it would seem. And, you know, the women are garbed in black. They're covered. If they have a beautiful face, no one should see it. It's really, again, I said before that the line between good and evil is becoming more and more clear. And the forbidding of joy, the forbidding of humor. They don't really have much humor. And this is something that Satan has robbed those people of. And it's a very tragic thing. They, you know, if we can introduce them to the joy of the Lord, they would blossom in it. But they're taught in this cult-like environment that those things are evil. So they're robbed of some of the most beautiful things in the world.
I hope that things will change for them.
And they are,
it's really
quietly.
Yeah, in some places. How? I mean, like I remember, like a story or so. I think 2 days ago, there was a Jew who was lynched. I mean, his car. They were throwing rocks, and he was saved by a Palestinian who arrived with his car and say, "Hey, come here, and I want to save you." And so this kind of stories happen, and it's so good. I know also Yehuda Glick's brother, Yitzhak Glick, he's a doctor. I don't know if you know about him. He lives in Efrat, and he does an amazing work for Jews, and he goes into Arab villages and he's well known and well loved by them. Come here and look after me, and you know all this. So we want to see life, you know, in the midst
That's
of all.
right. Well, Israel has opened its arms to injured Syrians in this war. Israel's field hospitals are set up in the wake of earthquakes and hurricanes and all of these things. Israel gives life, it brings life. And, you know, they have treated, it would be funny, except it's not, but several of the Hania, one of the Hamas leaders, his wife's been treated here, his kids, his grandkids. They're treated in Israeli hospitals, treated like everyone else.
Because they are patients.
That's it. And they said this about one of the recent assassinations that happened here in Israel. The police shot the killer. It might have been, no, it was another one. I can't remember. There've been too many lately. But the doctor said, we don't care if his hands are handcuffed to the bed. We treat him the same way we treat everyone else. And I see people complain about that on Facebook. But that's the spirit of Israel. That's loving life and cherishing and caring for life and trying to keep people alive in spite of what they've done. It's an amazing thing.
It's amazing, yes. Israel, there is no place like Israel. They are really an amazing example for all these kind of things. We spoke in the last program about the refugees. You went to Kurdistan, and you wanted to add maybe something about, or maybe I want to ask you maybe a few more questions. When the refugees are in Kurdistan, I know refugees camps are not always pleasant at all.
Very bad.
So are they mixed with some other people, the Christians, and can you explain a bit?
As I understand it, the Christians in Erbil, the Christian refugees, have chosen not to go to camps, and they're staying in very bad circumstances, but they've heard about the camps, and they've heard that they're not safe there because there are gangs, there's rape, there's drug dealers. It's a very bad environment, and not much policing of it. There are camps, I think in the north, that have Christians, and they are separate from the Yazidis. Those are the two groups that fled mostly from ISIS, Islamic State. So I think the Christians, if they have a choice, will set up be in their own community. And if it's possible, I think probably I don't know about the UN, I don't really know what they're doing, but I think these other groups that are trying to establish residential help for them are trying to keep them separated as much as can be. It's for their safety.
And we want to remind you, so dear friends, that Canon Andrew White, I'm sure that many of you know him, he's not allowed anymore to go to Iraq, but he has still something set up over there. And if you want to help, because we were speaking about that a bit on the last program, his foundation is called Foundation for Relief and Reconciliation in the Middle East. So if you want to help, you go to this this link, you go to the website, and I'm sure you can find PayPal or one way, you know, to be able to help. Especially, his family lives in the UK, so I'm sure Canon Andrew White, you go on his website and you'll be able to find things. So it's very important, especially now. Just think, you are cold in your houses, and like the people are starting to be cold. So in Kurdistan, it's cold. It's with the mountains. I wanted to ask you a question also about. I mean, I can imagine like living here. We see terror. These people have been close to ISIS. They are in camps, or they are like not far still from ISIS, and there is no wall to separate them.
Yeah.
How is it for them day by day?
They're very fearful, and some of them are very reluctant to tell their stories. They just want to kind of disappear into the crowd because they are so traumatized by what's happened, and not only what's happened, but what they've heard from each other. Even if what happened to them wasn't so bad, there's somebody right next door that saw something terrible. They've seen such violence, such hatred. And this group is running, I mean, it's a very well organized, very rich, very well managed army. And
yes, speak a bit about that, because I read not a long time ago they are the healthiest terror organization.
Yes, and in the world by far, and they're getting money every day. They've taken oil. Every time they set up in a city, they start charging enormous taxes. Plus, they've taken everyone's property, so everything belongs to them. Every time they go into a town or a city, and they're greedy. They take all the gold. You know, they take everything, and they are gaining money every day. I think now the governments are starting to track the oil and try to shut down the export, but Turkey's been very instrumental in helping them for reasons that remain somewhat unclear. But they have been piping oil through Turkey and selling it and making zillions of dollars.
So how can they do that?
Well,
they take over and that's it. And
yeah, they
keep
take
the
over,
people.
and people are greedy, and so people are getting money out of this. I mean, it's not, the Middle East is very complicated financially, and there's no real clean, squeaky way of doing things in the Middle East, and everybody gets a cut. So.
I know. I want to live, I want my family to live and my children, and
right.
so
Yeah,
let me do a bit of this and
bakshish.
a bit of that. Okay, do you have something else to add from your book? Why did you write this book, by the way?
I wanted to sort of write a love letter to Israel to begin with, but then when I started coming across these stories, when I was writing the book, when I first came here, I was writing happy little vignettes about my time in Israel for Jerusalem Post, but I started learning things like about the Temple Mount, for example. I didn't realize that the Muslims were saying that there was no temple on the Temple Mount. Arafat apparently said that first publicly to Bill Clinton, who was shocked. But I didn't realize this was an ongoing and ever-increasing program to rob Israel of Judaism and to make it entirely Muslim. And so I started researching it. Some of the articles I wrote came into the book and I developed them. That was one. There were stories about the rockets coming into around the Gaza area. I was able to go down and interview some of the Jews that were living in the rocket fire area. All the children were bedwetters. All the old people hadn't slept through the night for years. So, little by little, I realized these are things people don't know about. So I began to add those. And then when I came to the subject of the Jewish refugees, I was actually annoyed, and I'm still amazed that people don't know this story. Israel has not told the story, and American Jews don't even know the degree to which it happened. They know a little bit, but it was stifled, and I think there were political reasons for that, and there were also...
There seems to be a bit of shame, almost,
I think there's a shame,
it?
yeah.
Because I met some, and in the way how they were speaking, for me it was like, there was some shame there. And I was like, you don't need to be ashamed of that. It's like you've been checked out of the place, you had to live with nothing. So I don't know, I haven't still understand all this.
It's complicated, and it's national cultures that they were Egyptian Jews. Now there are no Egyptian Jews, and something's been lost, and there's some shame, I think, in letting that happen. Also, I think
maybe they couldn't do anything about it.
Yeah, they were powerless, completely powerless. And also, when they came here, there was conflict between the two different schools of Judaism, the Ashkenaz and the Sephardic Jews. And there was a certain amount of tension there, and people looked down on other people. There were judgments passed, morally and so forth. And the rabbis didn't agree. So there was conflict. It was not a pretty time. It was a very hard time. This country was floundering financially, and suddenly they've got almost 1 million people coming. And also, it was awkwardly done politically. So there are lots of reasons the lid was kept on the subject. But to argue about the Palestinian refugees without bringing to the table
I agree.
the same number or more, probably 250,000 more, it's ridiculous. It should not be ever discussed without those two being put on the table together.
And they are not refugees anymore.
No.
They don't want to feel like refugees. And this thing of the Palestinian refugees, which is like Arab refugees, because I like somebody, you were doing an interview with somebody, and she said, I was having my little box for Palestine. How do they speak about Palestinians now? And it's like Palestine was Israel, and now they find the name. Oh, there is so much things to say. I think you will have to come back and we will do some other program, because I'm thinking about other subjects, thing that people need to know.
Well, one of the things that amazed me was that the amount of property that was confiscated from Jews in all of those countries is estimated to equal 5 times the size of Israel itself.
Yes, I heard.
I
heard that because of your book, because of the research. Now, you have to read this book, because it's like a story. It's so well written. It's like you go with her, you discover Israel, but there is a lot of history, so you learn what's happened to the people, and a lot of facts and a lot of understanding of what's happening is very important for us to know these things, to be able to understand the Jewish people. Our time is up again. Thank you, Lela, for coming.
Thank you for inviting me.
And it's just wonderful to be able to do things together. And we want to be a blessing for you all over, usually UK, but Europe and America. And I know that is growing all around the world. People want to watch what's happening in Israel. So we're giving you some stories from here in Israel. Now from Lela and from me, we say bye to you and shalom, shalom.
You've been watching In the Last Days, a TV program with Martin and Natalie Blackham, the program that looks at Israel and the end times with teaching from a Hebraic perspective. If you would like to financially support the program or find out about conferences, meetings, or ministry products, then please contact us with the details on your screen. Visit our easy-to-use website at www.inthelastdays.com and register for our free e-newsletter. Get the latest news from Israel, product information, online video teaching, or watch today's TV program at a time that's convenient to you. Thank you again, friends and partners, for making this program possible.
See you same time, same station for the next program from In the Last Days.